Illinois versus Arkansas on Thanksgiving Day. Lots of food and lots of storylines. Locked On Illini, let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Locked On Illini. Depending on when you're listening to this or watching this, it's either Wednesday night or it could be on Thanksgiving Thursday. I just wanted to first start off and say I'm thankful and grateful for each and every single one of you. Who am I? My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at IlliniCast or at the Sunny V or all your favorite social medias. Just do a quick search for Locked On Illini. Send me a message, give me feedback, whatever it is you please. Just know on this Thanksgiving Day, I'm very grateful for each and every one of you guys and your guys' support. Speaking of today's episode, it's going to be brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So Thanksgiving Day, it's going to be a busy one for a lot of some of you are Illinois plus Bears fans. The Bears obviously kick off at, I believe, 11:30 Central, but immediately after that game comes on what might be the best game. No, not might be the best game. Is the best game on the college basketball slate, and that's Illinois versus Arkansas. Now, in an off-season episode, when I saw that Illinois had built up a pretty daunting out-of-conference schedule, I kind of listed in order my favorite games that I was most looking forward to. And despite an Alabama team, a Duke team, two premier programs being on our schedule, it was actually this game against Arkansas that I listed as my number one, and for a variety of reasons. Arkansas and Illinois may not seem like that they have much in common, and in actuality, they probably don't. Although there's that football tie-in with Brett Bielema previously being the head coach of the Razorbacks and now coming to Illinois. But this tumultuous offseason has brought in a lot of links between the two programs. And so where do we start? We can start with John Calipari, obviously transitioning over from Kentucky to Arkansas. And with him, he wanted to bring his entire coaching staff. He was able to bring former Illini Chin Coleman with him, but he was not able to bring arguably the best assistant coach in the country, Orlando Antigua, with him. Orlando, for whatever reason, decided that he didn't want to follow John to Arkansas, and he was welcomed back home to Champaign, where he had already coached under Coach Brad Underwood for a previous tenure in his career. And so that's the storyline. You have Orlando Antigua kind of involved in the game with his the two latest head coaches that he's worked under. We have, of course, the battles of the brothers. You talk about Big Z and Big T, both of which, let's be honest, are having very good years. Thomas Love is averaging 15.5 points, 8.5 rebounds, and about a half a block and a steal, 1.5 steals a game in 25 minutes, shooting 58% from the field goal and 70% from free throws and just under 30% from three-point line. His twin brother, Zavonimir, is averaging 12, 4, and 1 steal, 61% from field goal percentage, and that's 56.5% from the three-point shot. Both very talented bigs. That's going to be the story because, again, you're talking about two just behemoths. Big T is 7'1" and 250 pounds, and somehow he's a smaller brother. Big Z, Zavonimir, is actually 7'2" and 250 pounds. So, again, you're talking about story. How much of the game goes through them, I'm not sure. It's something that's going to be seen, but that's just not it either, right? When you have Calipari, when you have Brad Underwood, and this University of Illinois basketball team, you have a lot of freshmen that are going to be on that court. We already know about ours. We're going to be talking about Will Riley, Kasparas Jakucionis, Morez Johnson, but even Arkansas themselves have a lot of freshmen on their team, including his name's escaping. Boogie Fland, who might be the best freshman on the court on Thursday. And that's actually going to be one of my keys to the game, to see who is the best freshman on the court. Boogie himself right now is averaging 17 points, 3 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. It's going to be interesting for me to see if Kylan Boswell gets the call to guard Boogie. Boogie's about his size, 6'2", the type of guy where Kylan, despite being smaller, his stature is a pretty wide stature, right? Like, he's a physical. When he wants to be physical, he can really bother other point guards that are roughly his size. And so does Kylan guard Boogie and try to take him out the way he did against Alabama? I think he can, and I think that'll be one of the keys to the game. Speaking of keys to the game, by the way, this episode is being done live, so let me know in the comment section what your thoughts on this game is, what your predictions on the game are, what your keys to the game are. I want to see is, we've already talked about, this is not just going to be an issue for Arkansas, this is going to be an issue for every team we play for the rest of the season on our schedule. Is Arkansas going to be able to keep up with Illinois when it comes to scoring? Even on Thursday, let's be honest, Arkansas is probably the best defensive team we've played up until this year, up until this point in the season. Our lowest scoring output was 66 against Oakland. I think at the very bare minimum, Arkansas is going to have to get to 75, maybe 80 points to beat the Illini. I think the Illini, even against a tough defense with an off-shooting day, as long as they bring it, as long as they bring the energy, they'll be able to get to 80 pretty easy. Oakland, you kind of saw them play a little lackadaisical. You didn't see the sense of urgency there that they were really trying to, put the foot down on the throat. It was just a run through the motions type of game. That's not going to be the case tomorrow, or at least I can't imagine it would be the case against John Calipari and the Arkansas Razorbacks. Slightly off topic, you kind of saw why I believe that, because of our coach, Brad Underwood, right? Earlier on Wednesday, some of you in my Discord, we were talking about this. We were talking about Indiana and how they just got blasted by Louisville. Indiana, a team who I think just a couple episodes I talked about, who I was not looking forward to seeing in December when they were going to be ranked number 1 at some point in the country, because A, they've spent so much money on that roster, and B, they've got a Charmin soft out of conference schedule. So I thought they were going to coast through, but they didn't, because they just weren't ready. They didn't play with any sense of urgency. And there was a viral clip that's going viral, in particular with the Illini crowd right now, about Luke Goody just basically yelling at everybody. Like, hey, look, there needs to be people angry here. So people are not doing their jobs. And you just have Mike Woodson, who the folks at the Armchair Illini I've made a joke about, who just sending off to the side like he's one of the players who's also getting yelled at. But anyways, side note, that's not going to happen with Brad Underwood and the Illini, because Brad has his team come prepared to play. The battle between the two big guys, I'm very much looking forward to seeing. But as I kind of alluded to earlier, what I really want to see is who's the best freshman on the court tomorrow. Are we going to get big game Will Riley? Because I think that's the type of player he's going to eventually turn into, and the reason I have us winning the Big Ten eventually by the end of the year. I think the bigger the moment is when Will Riley's going to show up. And by the way, I'm going to be talking about Will, Kasparas, and Morez Johnson in the next segment as well. Can Will score 20 points off the bench? He's shooting 55% from three-point land right now. He's at 6'8". He's just impossible for most college players to guard. And so he can create his own shot. Will sometimes is his own enemy, and that he makes his own shot more complicated than it needs to be. Kasparas Jakucionis. Which version of Kasparas do we get? Do we get the Kasparas who very well might be one of the 10 best players in the country? The one that was very much hyped all off season long. The one where, I think someone called him Alpha Kasparas in the last game, where you saw him get mouthy, get verbal, get aggressive. Now, again, it's one thing when you're playing that way against subpar competition. Can he do it against Arkansas? Because if he can do it against Arkansas, again, we want to see more than 4 or 5 shots, right? I think that's the ultimate goal. We don't want to see him get technicals constantly. That's not the point. And neither does Brad Underwood. But we do want to see him be aggressive. We want him to look like he's looking for his shot, that he's a threat to score. We love it that he sets the table for everyone else. But if Kasparas is looking to score, that gives the defense one more thing to worry about. So that's another thing I'm going to keep my eye on Thursday during this game. As I mentioned, Boogie could very well be the player who, if maybe Brad Underwood doesn't put Kylan on Boogie or Kylan just can't keep up with him, he can be a guy who can score 22 to 25 points and be the reason Arkansas wins that game. I think ultimately, again, between these two programs, John Calipari, we're used to this, right? He always has talented young players on his basketball teams, whether it's at UMass, Kentucky, or now at Arkansas. Brad Underwood, this team is super young. Most of you know, at least my everydayers know, I predicted us to lose this game. Not just this game. I predicted this in the offseason. I just think that all our big games earlier on in the season, we might lose just because we're still trying to figure each other out. My opinion's starting to sway a little bit, and I was very surprised to see that Illinois was actually the favorite on Thursday. I believe they're 1.5 point favorites right as I hit the record button against Arkansas. So they're actually, this isn't an underdog that they're coming in as. They're expected to win. Now, granted, 1.5 points, you're still talking about pretty much a 50-50 split. Staying true to my prediction, I'm going to say I think we lose this game. I'll just say 87-84. Very close game. And trust me, I'm very close to flipping to the other side. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a fun game. So many storylines, so many things for us to watch. Another guy to keep an eye on, you know what, I'll talk about him actually in the next segment, because there's a guy who I think is being tremendously overlooked right now. If you take a look at his stats, what he's putting up, the fact that he isn't probably one of the 3 or 4 most talked about guys on the team genuinely surprises me. So we'll talk about that next. But I did want to remind you that immediately after the game on Thanksgiving, that's right, on Thanksgiving, I will be going live with a post-game report talking about what I saw, what I liked, what I didn't like. Hopefully, we can celebrate together with a victory. But if we don't end up on the winning side, we can have a little therapy session together. So make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and regardless, we'll see you after the game tomorrow. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Appreciate all of you tuning in on this live episode on late Wednesday night, or if you're watching this on Thursday, appreciate you guys tuning in. Just wanted to once again remind you that I appreciate each and every one of you. If you don't mind, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really helps out with the algorithm that YouTube uses, and it'll send the show out to other Illini fans. It's my goal to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the calendar year. It looks pretty daunting, maybe not feasible, but I'm never going to doubt the Illini Nation and the passion that you guys bring each and every episode. Thursday, it was early Wednesday. It was Ricky O'Donnell from, what was the website? Sports Bleachers, was it? SBN, SBN Nation released a new mock draft, of which 2 Illini, and now this has been kind of a theme, basically. Every time a new mock draft comes out, obviously there's 2 names that continue to keep coming up, and it looks like they could be potentially lottery picks. And the 2 guys I'm going to be talking about, and I've pulled up the article, and I'll put the article in the description later, is at number 8, they have Kasparas Jakucionis going to the Chicago Bulls. If you're an Illini fan and a Chicago Bulls fan, you might be able to see Kasparas and Io on the same basketball team, which would be interesting. And at number 20, they have Will Riley going to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, let me read the quick description of each player that they have. First, I'll just start off with Will Riley. Riley is a walking bucket. The skinny 6'8" freshman showed ridiculous shot-making prowess on the Nike EYBL circuit, and that's carried over to the start of his freshman season at Illinois. Riley has awesome shooting versatility with the ability to hit shots with awkward angles and deep range. The defense will be a question mark, but Riley can continue to rise up the board if he shows up progress as a passer. I think that's a pretty spot on. Let me read what they say about Kasparas. Kasparas' combination of positional size, elite passing vision, rim pressure, and shooting upside gives him a chance to force his way into the top 10 discussions. The 6'6" Lithuanian point guard has a case as the most creative passer in this class. He has a special ability to manipulate the opposing defense and zip outlets, corner skips, lobs, and pocket passes to his teammates for baskets. He's aggressive getting downhill, and while he's not an above-the-rim finisher, he's already shown impressive craft in getting to the foul line. Jakucionis appears to have a lot of confidence in his jumper, and with plenty of pull-up shooting flashes showing up on the tape from his time with Barcelona. The consistency with his three-point shot and overall scoring punch will be under the microscope, but there are a lot of traits here worth betting on. Now, for the most part, it's been pretty consistent that Kasparas has shown up a little higher than Will Riley in these mock drafts. I was a little surprised to see Will Riley not listed as a lottery pick, at least in this mock draft. Now, Ricky's a fantastic writer, and there's no reason for me to doubt what he's seeing on the court. And I want to hear your guys' opinion. For me, if I had to try to look, I've obviously watched every single Illinois basketball game so far, right? And I've seen what Will Riley has done, and I've seen what Kasparas Jakucionis has done. If I'm an NBA GM right now, I think I take Will Riley over Kasparas Jakucionis. Tell me if you agree with that or not. And I know, it might be 50-50. I just think right now, Will Riley, once he grows into his frame a little bit more, if he can add 15, 20 pounds to his frame, he's going to be a guy who's almost impossible to guard. One of the comparisons I've heard to Will is Michael Porter Jr., who plays for the Denver Nuggets. Now, I believe Michael Porter is about 6'10", 6'11", so a little bit taller, but I get what you're talking about when it comes to the game itself. Sure, Will Riley doesn't really seem to be all interested on the defensive side just yet, but there's a reason Will Riley is thriving in the Illinois offensive system. That reason is because Brad Underwood, or Tyler Underwood, is building the Illinois offensive system based on what they're seeing from the NBA. So Will Riley, to me, his game will translate pretty easily to that next level. And he's a guy who I think if I was right now, maybe right at the end of the lottery is where I'd be looking to take a guy like Will. Worst case, you've got a 6'8" guy who can shoot the three-pointer, again, 55% from three-point land as of this recording, and who has an innate ability to score at whatever level he's ever been at. I think at the very minimum, he's a guy who can score double figures in the NBA. Kasparas is interesting, and I want to give credit. I believe it was Greg Waddle from the Sleepers media show. And if it wasn't, I apologize. Greg brought up an idea that it looks like we've got 2 lottery picks on this basketball team, right? Between Will and Kasparas, even if it's not quite lottery. You're talking about just a couple picks outside. And it's been long thought that Kasparas is going to be a lock to go to the next level. And maybe, and I've said this myself, maybe you can convince Will Riley to stay one more year. And then in his sophomore year, you can see the talent. He can come back and be an All-American, not even that, genuinely a contender to be a National Player of the Year. But now, 5 games in, or I believe 6 games in, Greg brought up the idea that it could be in reverse, actually. Could it actually be Will Riley, who's, again, his game just seems to translate to what the NBA would want right away? Whereas Kasparas, I've talked about this on a couple episodes now, right? Maybe if Alpha Kasparas continues on for the rest of the season, then fine. He'll probably be an NBA player too. But his skill level is there. His talent level is there. Right now, his averages, I believe, are about 12, 6, and 6. As a freshman in the Big Ten, fantastic. Started off the season not shooting as much as we wanted him to. And one of the things I've been hoping to see from him is a little bit more aggressiveness and aggression. But could Kasparas be a guy who, let's be honest, he's not very athletic. And he certainly, as the Ricky O'Donnell had mentioned, he doesn't play above the rim by any stretch. Could he be a guy that ultimately you might be able to convince to come back to Champaign next year? Now, granted, this would cost a lot of money. And so that would take a significant portion of our NIL. Make sure, if you're not contributing to Icon, that you will be shortly. By the way, I will be having Kathleen Knight, the wonderful person in charge of Icon, on the show as early as next week, where we're going to kind of be talking about the whole Bryce Underwood situation. And a lot of you guys, whether it's in the Discord or via Twitter or X, have talked about, like, why can't Illinois do this? And so we're going to talk about the Illinois NIL situation and how we can all somewhat contribute and see if we can get our program to the next level. But back to Kasparas. Maybe there's an opportunity that if he doesn't end up being a 15, 16-point scorer, we can convince him to come back one more year with a very attractive NIL package. And all of a sudden, we have a sophomore year Kasparas Jakucionis. I mean, you're, again, talking about a guy who at that point would be not only the favorite to win Big Ten Player of the Year, but potentially the National Player of the Year. And before I wrap up, I know I'm going long on this segment. Morez Johnson. Have you guys been paying attention? I can't believe how little he's being talked about, and it's just because he's so quiet. But Morez Johnson in 13.8 minutes is averaging 5.3 points per game and 8 rebounds. 8 rebounds in 13.8 minutes a game, shooting over 50% from the field. I've said this weekly. Morez Johnson was put on this earth to rebound that basketball. And right now, what I thought would take a while, and that's usually for big men to, translate their play into the Big Ten Conference, that hasn't happened. Morez is at 6'9", 230 pounds. Right now, I genuinely think, and one of you guys asked, what about Tomislav and Morez Johnson in the lineup together? And I appreciate that, and I'm not ignoring it. On Friday's episode, it's going to be a community episode where I'm going to answer a lot of the questions that you guys have left for me in social media and on YouTube, everywhere, in the Discord, everywhere. So if you have a question that you want me to answer on Friday, drop them either here in the chat or on the various social medias I've talked about. Just search for Locked On Illini or join the Discord in the description. I think Morez Johnson, not this year, because obviously he still needs to work on his scoring touch, but as soon as next season, is going to be an all Big Ten basketball player. And I've said that about a couple people now, but I think Morez Johnson, if he wanted to this year, if he was starting next to Tomislav right now, I'll just spoil alert. It's what I call the death lineup. Okay, ultimately, I think, and I'll elaborate on this more on Friday, our best 5 guys come March, if we're in a really close game, against a really tough team. The 5 guys we're going to have on the court are Kasparas, Kylan, Will Riley, Morez Johnson, and Tomislav Ivisic. Those 5 guys are our 5 best basketball players. And so I understand why Morez may not be showing up on mock drafts now, but honestly, I think he'll be there as soon as the 2026 season, if not before. Who knows? Maybe this offseason. If he continues to rebound the way he's doing it, I'd be happy for him. But on the same note, I'd be kind of sad because I really think I was super excited to see Morez Johnson commit to the Illini so early in his high school career, and I was hoping to see him play for 2-3 years. But ultimately, if the reason he's not is because he went to the NBA too quickly, who can really be upset with that? Let me know what you guys think. Is Morez Johnson being overlooked this year? Is he not getting the amount of love that he should be? I understand Kasparas, Will Riley, and even Boogie Fland is going to get a lot of the attention tomorrow. But I'm calling it right now. My pick to click, I don't know if I can say MVP, but maybe the guy who contributes the most to tomorrow, or maybe the surprise name, is going to be Morez Johnson. We know the 2 bigs, the brothers, are going to go at it. But I have a feeling, and this is just a hunch. I had it earlier today, and so that's why I decided to have it on tape so I can hopefully, brag about it in the postgame on Thursday. I think Morez Johnson's going to have a monster game on Thanksgiving. All right, let's go through some of the comments real quick. Philip, nice to see you. His game prediction is 87 for Illinois, Arkansas 75. I would love that. If we have a double-digit victory over Arkansas, guys, I've been watching almost every Big Ten game I can over the past couple of weeks, just trying to get ready, for future episodes. When I'm scouting these teams, I want to have a foundation of knowledge of what they've looked like. And I'm telling you, quite honestly, right now, I think the Big Ten Conference runs through the Illini or Purdue. Simply those 2. But Illinois certainly has the higher ceiling. Whether they reach that ceiling, I don't know. But if they can have a 12-point victory over Arkansas on Thursday, my optimism is going to continue to grow. Phillips Key, DGL has a great defensive game guarding Boogie Fland. That would be, the other route, right? Like I mentioned Kylan in the first segment, but maybe it's DGL. Kevin Greenwood says, I'm optimistic. My only concern is who guards Thiero. Ben can't, in my opinion. He absolutely cannot. Thiero is one of those guys where this is going to be a common theme. We don't really have, and we're going to count on Trey White, right? But I think when we're going up against guys who are just really good wing basketball players, it's going to be one of those, let them score. Let's take the surrounding guys out. So in this case, let Thiero score, but let's try to limit Boogie to under 10 points, like we did, Mark Sears, who had 0 when Kylan was guarding him. Because Thiero's good, but he's not a superstar good, a guy who can carry the team alone good. And, with our pace, again, I think even in our bad games, we're going to score 80 points. The pressure, essentially, our best defense is going to be putting the pressure on the opposition to continue to score. Kevin says, Morez will be key this season. He's a force. If he gets at least 2 scoring moves down low, that would be massive. If he has 2 scoring moves, then he's going to the NBA. Which, again, I'm not going to be upset about, but this kid has blown away my expectations. I thought he would be a guy that, would be a solid role player off the bench for this team. And, he's playing role player minutes, but anytime he is on the court, you watch him, he belongs. And I know there's a lot of talk about Will Riley replacing Trey White in the starting lineup. I think Morez Johnson's the guy who, if he played 20 minutes a game, 25 minutes a game, we have 3 freshmen that could earnestly, and I mean this, finish on the all Big Ten freshman team. Philip says, keep Morez off the mock drafts. Waited 3 years for him to get here. Won't want him 2 or 3 years, maybe 4. I think zero chance we get him for 4 years. But Phil, that's basically exactly what I said, right? Like, I knew once he committed, I was living in Chicago. I got to watch him play multiple times. I was like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for him to put on the orange and blue. And I haven't been disappointed in the slightest. And I take it on as my responsibility every time I go on another show, a national show, who wants to bring in someone talking about the Illini. From this point on, I'm going to keep bringing up Morez Johnson's name. Because I think just because we have Will Riley and Kasparas, he's being tremendously overlooked right now. And just like in the Oakland game, I wanted to put my eyes on Kylan because I know there was a lot of buzz about, whether he was a bust or not, believe it or not. That was a talk at that point just because his scoring numbers or his offensive numbers weren't there. But I think now the market's kind of corrected itself and realized like, no, Kylan's actually really, really good at basketball. And he's been our defensive ace and he's contributing in a lot of ways to this basketball team. I think tomorrow or Thursday, depending on when you're listening to this or watching this, I'm going to keep an eye on Morez Johnson because, again, the spotlight's going to be on the two bigs, the brothers. But I really think that most teams have one answer to a big guy. I want to see what Arkansas's answer to Morez is going to be. Kevin asks, so who does he replace Ben? Big T is balling and we aren't big past Morez. Yeah, I mean, that's the issue, right? So that's the reason I don't think it's going to be a permanent switch in the starting lineup. I think in the starting lineup, permanently, Morez Johnson is going to be probably our sixth man. You're going to have Big T and probably Ben Hummerkaus. Mainly because as you said, Morez is still a freshman, so he's going to get into foul trouble. That's why you can't start the two together because you don't have a physical big to come off the bench. Kerry Booth, it looks like he may not even be very much in the rotation right now. He may still need a little bit more development. He may be a guy who contributes more during his junior season than he is going to this year. So what I was kind of alluding to earlier, and again, I promise I'll elaborate on this on Friday's episode, is I think it's at the end of the game. When the score is tight and we're playing up against a very good basketball team, that's when you'll see that lineup that I mentioned earlier. Just because Morez does everything. The thing is with Tomislav, being as skillful as he is and as good of a shooter as he is, he's going to open up space for Morez Johnson to attack the rim and get lobs from Kasparas. And again, I don't want to spoil Friday's episode, but you guys are kind of getting a taste of that. But that's going to wrap it up for me today. I can't believe I went this long. That wasn't the plan. Please, on your way out, if you don't mind, hit that like button, subscribe button. It's a way for you guys to support the show, and it doesn't cost you guys anything. If you guys are on Discord, some of you guys in the chat are already talking to me all day, every day. We talk Big Ten. We talk Illini. We even talked Little Bears yesterday. Please, join, support the channel in any which way you can. Just know Thursday after the game, immediately after the game, on Thanksgiving, hopefully some of you will be awake and not in food coma necessarily. But even if you are in food coma, make sure you hit that notification button. I will not have my Thanksgiving meal until that show's over because otherwise I'm going to be doing that show half asleep. And that's not what I want to do. So hit that notification button. I'll see you at the post game against Illinois versus Arkansas. I think we lose, but I'm optimistic. What does that mean? Take it for what it's worth. I'll see you guys Thursday night. ILL. Love you guys.